From the world of AV programming and control with James King, I'm Steve Greenblatt, and this is Ask the Programmer. James, how are you today? I'm glad we're back and looking forward to introducing and talking to another great guest.
I'm doing good, Steve, as always. And uh, work doesn't stop because we're doing a podcast. So I'm in the car traveling. But yeah, no. How are you doing, Steve?
Doing well. I'm glad you were able to make it, and I totally agree. And you know what? If we're not bringing stories from the field and talking about what reality is in this industry, I think we're not doing it justice. So. Um, I'm glad to welcome back a guest who was on our previous episode. And if you missed it, it was jam-packed with great information on C Sharp. That's episode 222. I'd like to welcome back Mike Krejci from CTI. Thanks again for being with us, Mike, and we're looking forward to speaking with you.
Always great to be on, Steve, James. I'm really excited about the topic today. This is something I've had passion on really big for the last couple of years. So really excited to talk about today.
Awesome. That couldn't ask for more than that. And one of the things, so definitely tune into our previous episode on C Sharp. And one of the things we talked about there is how the AV industry is progressing. And when we're talking about using modern programming languages, we have to start thinking differently. Workflows are different. And part of that is using source and version control. And I have to credit Mike. Mike suggested this topic, and his passion about it is really impressive. And this episode is going to be just as valuable as the past one. So listen real carefully. So Mike, I'll let you start us off. When we're talking about version and source control, we're not talking about just doing a save to a new revision or changing a name and keeping a text document, are we? This is a lot more involved process here and a lot more formalized. I'll let you explain.
But all of those are versions of version control, Steve. And version control is any method really for, keeping track of versions. And version control could be anything, right? It could be a picture, it could be a text file, it could be a piece of code, it could be a compiled piece of code, right? And where source control really gets more into the actual line code. And so there's a little bit of difference between version and source code. And I think, the terms get used interchangeably. But just putting files onto a server and going, yep, this is version 1, this is version 2, version 3. What we've been doing in AV forever, right? Going back as long as I've been doing it, that is in theory a mode of version control. Is it a good one? History can be the record on that. How well has it been done? But as someone who works in a decently sized organization who's had programmers come and go over the 37 years of our company, a question I really got tired of hearing um, was, who has the code? Where's the code? What is the latest version of the code? Or any of those questions got asked. And every time it bothered me, because how do you know what is the last version? Uh, who's the last person to touch it, right? You know, in a one person show, it's that person, but no one works in a one person show, right? Maybe I do in my house on the control system running in my house. I know I'm the only one who touches it, but I touch it on multiple different computers, right? Is it this computer or that computer? So even then, in just a simplest system, right, my house, with me programming it, you have to have some sort of control on it. But when you start talking about whether it's the install tech, it's the service tech, it's the project manager who went out to deploy it, it's the programmer, it's the remote programmer, it's the touch panel designer. Those are all people in one team that are involved into the project, but then there's multiple teams in your organization that are working on it. Now it becomes okay, it could be one of hundreds of people, thousands of people in an organization of scale, how do you know who the last person was? There's people in my organization, or any organization that are bad at putting files to a network drive. They are bad at naming files, right? We all have them. We all have worked with them. They frustrate every one of us, right? They are bad at, oh, I'm just going to make this one change and I'm not going to rename the file. Oh, I'm going to push up the file when I get time to sit at the office. Well, that's 3 months later. He forgot. They forgot by then to push that file. So it all becomes part of this story of where's the code? Where was it? Now, years later, going back, I never touch a system once. You go touch it again, you just work with that same customer. You have to add another source. You know, James has the, luxury of working in, a single campus in a set of rooms. They're constantly, I would imagine, going into those rooms, updating and making changes, making feature updates, making bug fixes. Well, they're going into those rooms repeatedly. Well, you don't want to go make a change today that's a version 3 now, 3 versions back, and we now broke something we've already fixed once. So that's really where version control and source control comes into into play. And that's using, we talked in the last episode about traditional programming techniques, right? And whether that be object oriented or the modern languages, or teams of programmers, version control, software control, source control is really part of that. Whether that be Git or Subversion or any of those, now you're getting into where a real software developer is living is into those, and you can see what people are changing. You can go back to any version and do all of this fun stuff. And it becomes really exciting. And I've just talked a whole lot of times, Steve. I don't even remember where the question was because I'm just so ingrained into what version control and source control and how awesome it is for our industry.
And we're going to get into the how to, but I'm going to let James comment a little bit from his perspective. But what you said, if there isn't a person, if our audience could not relate to one of those points, I think that they're listening to the wrong podcast because everything that you said there brought back very vivid memories and was very relatable. So thank you. And it's always great to share that type of stuff. And I can't wait for you to give us the how to and the solution. But James, from your perspective, to me, this sounds like something that is a must have, not a nice to have. And is this something that you see as a responsibility of the programmer or maybe the client? Because in reality, the versions will continue to grow over time and probably be more significant after handoff than before.
So, yeah, really, what I like about this episode is we have a very smart person who can talk on this. I love the version control, source control. I love the idea, but I am no expert. I have never done it properly in my life. Like Mike said, when I was at home writing code, my code was a mess. What computer was it on? What folder was it in? I did my .1, .2, whatever. I just recently started to get into, using GitHub and repositories and stuff. So I am definitely no expert, but Mike has brought in something, even though I'm no expert, I have been saying for years. I was like, even to myself, like version control, source control is important. It To me, it's like documentation. Nobody likes doing documentation, but it is critical. It is basically like eating your veggies. No one likes it, but you have to do it. Version control, source control, same way. Everyone's like, oh, I'm going to do that later. I want to get to the fun, wow, bang, whiz thing now. I'll handle the version control. I'll handle the source control later. Well, later never comes. As the saying goes, tomorrow never comes. It's always tomorrow. So yeah, I think having Mike here is great. I can sit back. I can close my mouth and just listen to expert talk.
I would argue we're doing version and source control is more like drinking water, or even more important than eating veggies. So
Yeah.
I agree with you there. And Mike, why don't you let us know? James said the magic word that I was waiting for, repository. So maybe talk a little bit about that, how this works, and some pointers to people that are going to go down this road, because it does require discipline, as you mentioned. It does require setting rules, having a workflow, and so forth. But it eliminates so many pitfalls and gotchas, from my understanding. And one that you didn't touch on, but I hear happens a lot, is I have my code in the laptop that got stolen. So that's another good good scenario. So I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, so I'm most familiar with Git, Git, as a source control or version control platform, right? It does both of them. So that is where I'm going to speak most to about that. But there's also TFS, there's Subversion, there's Mercial, there's all kinds of other solutions for doing version control, source control. Your results may vary on which ones you want, right? When we were determining in our organization what we wanted to use, we chose Git. And that's probably I'd say probably the most popular in overall in software development. And that's where we wanted to go. So that is where my focus is going to be going on that. And also when it comes to Git, it's run on a server at some point, right? You can host that locally, right? If I wanted to, I could run a Raspberry Pi running a Git server and doing version control on that at the very lowest level. Um, I'd at the simplest level, right? I can run it on my computer on my closed network here and never go outside of my internet. But you also have GitHub or Azure DevOps, Bitbucket, all these cloud organizations that are running that, and that are running Git in the cloud that as a service. Um, you know, GitHub's probably the most famous of those. If I had to argue, everybody, there's all kinds of ones you can use. Um, you know, it does not have to be public, right? You go search on GitHub, you can find lots of stuff that's out there public. You can keep stuff in lockdown, in proprietary for yourself. So just covering the basis there. But Steve and James mentioned repository. If you don't know what that is, that's where your actual code is stored inside of that Git environment. A lot of people call that a repo for short, right? But repository, it's not the thing the doctor gives you. Um, it's a suppository. But right, a repository is where you store your code, and there's a
That's a good one.
um, the benefit of repository and source control is when I go make a change, I don't have to change from version 1 to version 2 to version 2 final to version 2 really final, version 2 final end of day, version 2 I'm going to blow up this building if it's not the final, right? And you don't have to do that. As you modify code and you save it back into that repository, and you then make a commit, which is a message of a point in time, a snapshot really. All your versions are there in history without changing the file name. So one, I'm making less files, but two, I still have that history. I can go back to any one of those points in time, and it's think of a checkpoint in a video game, right? You're going through this game and you're going to level to level to level. Every time I make a commit, I'm hitting that save point, that checkpoint. I can always go back to it. If I have something working here at the end of the day, I'm going to save that checkpoint before I go make that commit, before I go make this next chunk of code change. that I know could break everything. It's that drastic of a change. I'm going to make that checkpoint, that commit, which commits are part of, or is just as part important as the version control and source control as the code itself, because it tells you that history. Um, you know, one of the things that I've adapted over, pause, go back to, right, repos, right? So that's where our code is. And you want to keep that kind of close to a solution, in the traditional programming sense. So, what we've decided to do for our repos is a room or a system is in a repo. So, if we're doing 4 rooms on for a company, we're doing 4 separate repos, one for each one of those rooms, and that's housing their touch panel files, their program files, configuration files, everything for that system is in that repository in one little spot. So we're checking that out, we're pushing it back in, we're making those commit to that, and then moving on to the next room. Yeah, that's a repo, Steve.
No,
I before I answer the next 4 questions for you. So
all good, all good. No, we're, as James said, we want to hear from you. So, we'll keep going down this path because that's a great definition. One thing that I've learned, and again, I'm going to say that my AV programming experience, the my commit ended a long time ago. So I'm going to talk a little bit out of turn, but the use of repositories, one of the powers of it is that you can detect some of the changes from version to version, if you will, and that's really powerful. And I know that uh, needed to be adapted a bit to the AV programming world. Is that something that is fully featured and people can take advantage of, or is it something that, as most things in AV, we have some boundaries or some things, some adjustments that we have to put our thought process through?
So this is one of the things where modern languages are definitely helping us out when it comes to source control. However, not everything we program in AV is a nice, pretty modern language. I'll throw out a couple examples, right? Um, a traditional AV touch panel file, whether that be from Extron AMX or Crestron at this point, right? Those touch panel files are not, there might be human readable text in there in the file, but it's not where I can just hit enter, 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 add in a button in a text file. It has to go through their editor. Any of our audio DSP files, right? From any of the manufacturers. I can't add a gain, a gain blocker volume control just by hitting enter in a text file. It's in a crazy file that's not human readable or editable. Um, so those are a little we're saving a point in time when we do those files. And but when we come to if it's a script, Lua, Python, if it's tradition, simple plus even, right? AMX in their languages, or C sharp, any of those, we now have the ability to, if I hit enter, enter, I can add in a line of code and it just works. Um, we'll probably see an announcement from uh, the Crestron in the next 6 months to a year where their simple Windows is going to be able to support a source control process, which is really exciting for all of us. That's the industry, the group in the industry that still uses simple Windows, right? And that's a huge chunk of the industry is still using that. platform. So when that supports source control, that's going to be huge.
So that's kind of where we cross over between the version control and the source control side of things. The version control being we could always use that, but the source control is maybe if we describe it as an added benefit to using a repository and using a formalized service to manage versions.
Yeah. And, so Git has, when you're setting up your Git environment, there's some files in there that help along with that, right? So as you're going down your version control, source control journeys, right? There's .git ignores, there's got .git attributes that help you set up the Git software to know what everything is, right? I'm going to treat a C# file, or I want Git to treat a C# file differently than a touch panel file or an image, right? If I put an image, if I put an image in and I recolor it and I put it on and I resave it, it doesn't know what the difference is, right? It's a completely different file. It doesn't know that I colored the bird blue to red. It doesn't know that. But if I had a text file that said red and I changed the text to the word blue, it knows what the difference is there. So that's just setting up the Git environment. And there's plenty of examples out there on the internet for, Git ignores and Git attributes for AV programmers. So go find those. I'll see if we can find some to put in the show notes for Steve. But those exist out there, and those will help you along that journey as well now.
That's fantastic. I appreciate the clarification on that, and I think that's a good way for our audience to put some of this into perspective. I think similar to what we said previously, you may start down this road, and you may your journey may change, and you're going to learn along the way. Are there's some tips that you can provide for people to get started, and how they should put maybe some of the common struggles that they may encounter.
Yeah, so it was an unrelated quote this morning that someone said about it doesn't take long to turn a small sailboat, but if you're turning a big warship, it takes a whole lot of time to turn it. If you are a small organization, a small programming team, start this journey now. Uh, as somebody who is in a large organization and we went down this road, and went live with a true source control version control system in the past 18 months. Went live with it. It took us about 18 months beforehand to get ready for it. There's a lot of things at play in a larger organization, more than just, hey, let's commit some files up to GitHub. So if you're in that small organization, start now. You're gonna thank me later. It's get the code up there, and you're gonna be happy. You're gonna have less of those questions. Where's it? Where is the code? You're gonna want to do this, right? It's SharePoint or Box or OneDrive or uh, any of those services, right? They work. They are not bad solutions, right? We've been using them for as long as people have been programming AV, right? We've been throwing them on disks and servers, and it does work to some effect. Otherwise, there's every AV company ever would have failed, right? Because they would have lost code, right? Which obviously didn't happen. It does have some semblance of working. It is not the best solution. I'm in version control and source control, is going to save you heartaches, headaches. It is going to save you from having to do work twice, right? I have a friend who goes, how many times do we want to hang a 98-inch display? Zero. probably have to hang it once, but we don't want to hang it at all. We sure as heck don't want to hang it twice. Um, you know, so the same thing with coding. I don't want to code something twice I've already coded before. I don't want to have to do it. I don't want to have to figure out what that solution was to that bug. I don't want to have to go spend that time back on the client site redoing something I've already done. So if we can save our code in a place we know where it's at in a trusted location, you know, out on the cloud, and we can go back to it, then thank goodness. We're going to save ourselves time and not have to do work over again.
That is such valuable insight, and I would say even for bigger organizations, they should start now too. But they probably need to plan first and before they could dive in. Whereas the smaller ones can dive in, and one of the things that I could share, I know that my team has adopted this over the past 10 years in some form or fashion, but it's only in the last few that we've really leveraged it, and it does require making sure that there's a full commitment to it, and there's a learning curve, and there's a discipline involved, but it's you can't exist without it, quite honestly, once you see the value of it, because especially working on a team, as you mentioned.
And like you said, Steve, like it's an adoption. It's a learning process, right? It's building up some standards and procedures. You know, um, a lot of us, programmers like to color a little bit outside the lines, right? We think we're a little bit special, that the rules don't always apply to us and we do things a little bit different, right? And I'm one of them, right? That rule doesn't necessarily apply to me, or we're gonna do things a little bit differently over here. We're gonna make this work. Um, there was a lot of things that we determined as spinning up this system was okay. We need everyone to be on the same page on some of these things. What were our non-negotiables as far as our process and our procedure, so that everyone, whether they are in the UK, whether they're in India, whether they're in Indiana, or whether they're in California, they are able to find the code in the same manner, and they know how to find it, they know what it's going to be called, and they can go do it without having to ask questions. Right? So we are empowering everyone to be able to find things easily while using a complicated system, right? This is something that they teach, software developers, and I'd have an AV tech who's never written a line of code in his life now has to understand it. So how do we make it acceptable and accessible for an AV tech who's used to pulling cable to understand version control, but also still play in the realm of the software developers that they are able. It's not too watered down for them. So it was definitely a lot of balancing act to get there.
And as we wrap up, one other point that I can let you comment on, and know it's something that's another added value of adopting, a version source control, is the ability to do code reviews and to be able to share code amongst your team, and have this centralized um, repository, but also being able to check things in progress rather than wait till the end, which could be a huge value and a savings of time, and avoiding some pitfalls.
Yeah, so teamwork is definitely something that is used on every one of our projects. I'd say every piece of code that goes through our organization, every repository is touched by a minimum of 4 people, right? From
Wow.
our touch panel designers, our base code programmers, our folks that load and certify in our rack department, uh, to our closers out in the field, to our remote support specialists. So that's up to 5 people that are touching every repository on every project. And So this gives us an easy way, I say easy, right? An easy way for all those people to be working on the same project, get things pushed, pulled in a simple manner, right? It's the downside and the benefit of having a large company is that many people touching it, but uh, it needs to be accessible for everyone. And there are tools to, you know, check for check for code and rules and namings. We've looked into them. It's on a roadmap. It's not high a priority for us, but if I there are some tools we have at our disposal to check for consistency and quality out there in these tools to do that. But we're not utilizing those currently. But one thing we have been able to use is we've now built up, several hundred. I think we're almost at 800 different clients that we have code repositories for. So that could be one code repository under that client. It could be we've got some that have hundreds of code repositories under a client. We're able now to search all of those code repositories for words. So let's say we're doing a manufacturer comes out with a new widget, and it's uh, the Greenbird 3. We can search all of our code repositories for Greenbird 3 and see where that's been deployed. And because we're just looking, at its heart, most of the code gets down to a text file at some point in time. Even if it's we talk simple Windows, right? Where it's not a editable code file, text file, but it is a text file. If we search Greenbird 3 and that's in a simple Windows file, that will show up for us. Or if it's in a traditional code, whether it's Lua or C Sharp or Python, we can find it there. If it's an HTML file, we can find it there. We can go find or if we put a README, a documentation there, we can go find that code repository where that is, and we can go access that for the next job we're doing with that product. So
Another great point, and
that's become a great thing for us.
yeah, I can only imagine. It's something in years past we thought about putting together a database, but this is even more powerful to be able to, because that's huge. James, before we let Mike go and wrap this up, any uh, questions or thoughts you wanted to insert?
No, not really. Again, Mike, this is great information. Love hearing it. It was a great episode where I could sit back and, not talk and listen to an expert talk, which is great. Yeah, I would say probably like I know it was hinted on, but like what I really like about the repository is you can actually do code validation. Like, you can take a junior coder and have them work on something, and before pushing it out, have your seniors review it easier than is the way we used to. But other than that, I think Mike hit every great point, and I have nothing else to add.
Uh, I'm going to throw one more thing in, and maybe we'll talk about it in a future episode, because we're going to have Mike on, because there's going to be some spin-offs of these shows. But as a client, I could see this being a huge value, and one of the benefits of having a repository is it's shareable to somebody in the outside world, and knowing that this exists, and knowing that you have this history and this way of storing code that is not just doing it in the old-fashioned way should be a big confidence builder for our clients that need to have access to it. And because the worst thing in the world is that you lost your source code.
Yeah. And you know what? Now that I'm thinking of it, there was something that Mike hit on that was great. And I want to also add the whole searching across the repositories in your whole environment, hundreds of rooms or, thousands of clients is great. And like you said, oh, you need to update this one feature, you can search for it. Cool. We do that in AV a lot. The real benefit, and this is where I think, some business owners will take good light of it. if there's a security saying you need to roll out, you can hit it in every location right away. You don't have to sit there and go, oh, I gotta find this room's code and that client's code and this person. It's all in one spot. You can get to it easy and roll out your security patches.
Another great point. Mike, how can people get in touch with you? How can they learn more about what you're up to and ask more follow-up questions? Because I'm sure that there will be more. And also
Absolutely.
share about CTI as well, please.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn at the Mike Krejci. Um, that is where I can be found probably the most. Reach out there if you have questions on this. If you want to know about the trials and tribulations of going down this avenue of creating this process and system in your company, reach out. I am happy to talk. It's getting me to shut up. That's the trick. But reach out there, and for CTI, you can go to cti.com. Uh, we are expanding 40 something offices in the US and now overseas. One of the, I'd say the greatest integrator in the world, but one of the largest. So find us there, cti.com.
Absolutely. And you're talking to the man that's really at the heart of the programming world at CTI. So you have a great advantage and insight there. And Mike's a great guy to work with. So please reach out to him. James, how can people get in touch with you, learn what you're up to, and also carry on this conversation?
As I say, Google me, you'll find me. I'm out there. Hit me up on the LinkedIn, ask the programmer community. Again, make sure you connect with Mike. Great information from him and great wealth of information. He'll help you out. Again, that's it. Google me, you'll find me.
Absolutely. And between Mike and Chief from UCLA and a couple other of our recent guests, like what a great lineup. So make sure you're going back in our library and picking up these gems and really valuable tips. So please reach out, listen to them, and we're here to help. And the ESSA programmer community is a great place to carry on the dialogue. For me, you can reach me at Steve Greenblatt on social media. My company, Control Concepts, is a supporter of this podcast, and we help programmers by building ties to different products through API integrations, as well as expanding the functionality of your systems through code blocks, modules, drivers, plugins, and so, etc. So you can find all of that at our website, controlconcepts.net. And what's we'd like you to do is continue to engage with us. Let us know what you think. Please suggest topics, reach out to us, and also let us know if you'd like to be a guest like Mike. And we'd like to keep serving this community and providing the content that is really valuable and helps to raise the bar in the AV programming world. So reach out to us through all of the different methods already mentioned. And if you don't already know, we have a video version on YouTube and an audio version in your favorite podcast platform. Both are valid and check them out. And we thank you for listening and watching. And until next time, this has been Ask the Programmer.